Did it, the books, the bid it, the books, the did it, the books, books.
All right. Welcome back to I'll Read It Eventually. This is another thrifting video. I had two stacks of books, and I decided to just knock these out one right after the other. Um, and so the last episode, that was a thrifting episode, um, was sort of a hodgepodge of books I got at yard sales and books I got while I was on vacation and just kind of all over the place. Just a couple that I had not talked about and didn't really have anything else binding them together except that I hadn't talked about them yet. All the books I'm about to talk about now in this video are from the same Peddlers Mall. There's a new Peddlers Mall. It's kind of ironic, a new Peddlers Mall. But there is a new location of a Peddlers Mall that opened um, relatively close to where I live. And I love those kind of places, not just because of books, but just I think secondhand things are fascinating. Honestly, I think old things are fascinating. And so you do have to be careful when you go to places like that because there's a lot of just trash. There's a lot of stuff that's not worth anything. And one wonders why anybody would throw a price tag on it and be like, hey, I bet somebody will pay $35 for this. Um, so there's a lot of that, right? And then there's also a lot of things which are massively overpriced. One of the things I found actually at this Peddler's Mall was that books were massively overpriced. Um, there would be, a mass market paperback of, a John Grisham novel, like The Firm, um, that had clearly been read, 5 or 6 times and the spine is cracked. And I would be like, oh, that's interesting. And John Grisham, I've heard about The Firm, I've seen the movie, and I opened the cover, and they wanted $5 for it, and I was like, that's not what you ask for a book like that, right? If it's a well-read copy of a mass market paperback, you ask for $1, maybe $1.50 if it's been read several times, but it's a rare book or it's a book that you know everybody likes or a lot of people like and is likely to be bought $1.50. But like there were books at this place that were a dozen years old at least, um, were not in perfect condition at all, and they were asking $5 to $7 for them. And when people go to a peddler's mall, or at least I'll say when I go to a peddler's mall, what I'm looking for is not, hey, can I get this book for half of what it's originally sold for? My question is, can I get a deal? Right? And that's, to me, not a deal. So I walked through this entire place. I need to plug my laptop in. 1 second.
Anything mechanical, give it a good bash. Try now.
Okay. So, Peddler's Mall. I walked through basically the entire place and went up and down every aisle one day. Um, when I had some time, my kids were not with me, and my wife was actually homesick, so I had some time to kill because she just needed to sleep. And so I walked through the whole place, looked in every booth, and every time I saw books, because again, I'm buying for a school library, so I'm looking for books that are relatively inexpensive, but that are classics or are young adult stuff that might interest, middle and high schoolers. And so I was looking into lots of books or flipping them over to see what people were asking for, and everything was massively overpriced. I mean, just so expensive. And everything really, I would say everything in this place seemed to be very, very expensive. And so I was almost, it's been almost an hour just walking through this place, had found nothing. I think I had two books that I had found that were, one was an H.P. Lovecraft thing that was asked, they wanted like $4, but it was H.P. Lovecraft, and there's nothing like that in the school library. So it was like, well, okay. And then there was another book that I found that was $1. I don't even remember what it was, but found like two things in this entire store, talking 40 or 50 booths. And so I was walking down the final aisle, and I was like, there's just nothing here. That's it, right? There's just nothing here. So I'm not coming back to this place. And then I passed this booth, came around a corner, I was like, oh, there are books here. It's just books. It's like 3 shelves that was nothing but books. And none of them were full, but I was like, well, a lot of books. They're just selling books. Maybe that means they know what they're doing with book prices, you know? Because there was one other booth that was just books, but all of those were way overpriced. And so I was kind of like, well, I'll go open a couple covers. And I walked up, and there were a bunch of coffee table books, and I could immediately see, oh, those are all $5. So probably not what I'm looking for anyway, but it's like, yeah, probably this is the same deal. And then the guy who ran the booth walked up with a cart that he was pushing full of stuff, and he was like, oh, hey, man, I'm stocking this right now if you want to hang out for a minute. And he explained, what he was doing, and that he was bringing all this stuff in for his boss's grandparents or something. Somebody had passed away, so they were trying to move a bunch of stuff pretty quickly. And so he said, they're paying me to get all these books out of their house, and they didn't really want a particular amount for them, so they're priced to move. I was like, oh, great, yeah. What do you like? What's that mean? Like, what's kind of the price range? And he goes, well, those coffee table books there are $5 a piece. They're big, most of them are printed in color, so I figured, probably worth $5 to somebody if they're like really into impressionism or whatever. He's like, if it's a novel or just like a regular book, they're all $1. And that set the bell ringing. And so I grabbed a number of things for the school library, but then there were a number of things that I grabbed for myself as well. So to start off with, again, all these were $1. This one makes sense because it's a mass market paperback. It's really small. But this is actually a really famous book, The Martian Chronicles by Ray Bradbury. Bradbury's most famous for Fahrenheit 451. That's probably the book that most people would say that they know by Bradbury. But The Martian Chronicles, if I remember correctly, is about a group of people who go to colonize Mars, and they find that Mars has been previously inhabited. And so it's sort of what happens to them as they attempt to colonize the planet Mars. Bradbury is one of the sort of titans of science fiction. So this is not his only science fiction work. Technically, Fahrenheit 451 is science fiction, but he is sort of a titan in science fiction, and I know for a fact that this will be a really good book. And looking forward to jumping into it. Again, it's really small too, so should be pretty quick read, but nothing but quality there. So, The Martian Chronicles by Ray Bradbury. The second book I picked up is this. It looks a little goofy. I'm not gonna lie to you. I almost didn't buy this, but then I noticed what kind of book it was. So, if you look at the front, The Personal History of Henry VIII by Francis Hackett. And I looked at it and I was like, this is for little kids. I almost put it in the box for the school library, and then I happened to turn it over to the back and saw there's part of the modern library. Modern library is the same imprint as the modern library classics that I've mentioned before. And a lot of these books, when you see them, you actually will see them just the hardcover, or just the spine here, with this little fella here running with the torch. There's no way you can see that. This dust cover is, oh, there we go. Yeah, that little fella there running with the torch. And modern library classics is what these are now. They no longer come in hardbacks, or at least the hardbacks are not nearly as common. But originally, these books were almost all hardbacks, and this is supposed to be a pocket-sized hardback book. That's just like a laughable idea to me that you would ever put one of these in your pocket. But that's what this is supposed to be, is a pocket-sized modern library classic. And so this is a biography of Henry VIII by a woman named Frances Hackett. It's a fairly famous book for the time that it came out. Nowadays, it's not what you might call an academic biography. it's more of a well, it's academic for its time. Yeah, I'm not going to get into it. But the fact that it is modern library, you can see it's actually numbered here, 265 modern library. So these books actually are increasingly quite rare. This was published in this one was published in 1945. So this is an old book, and for being published in 1945, it's in really, really good shape. Even the dust jacket is actually in really good shape for being from 1945. So partly because of what it cost, and partly because of what it is, and then also because I am interested in Henry VIII. Here you go. So modern library classic, or actually at that point it was just modern library. Henry VIII. The next one's a little scandalous, and by a little scandalous, I mean it was scandalous when it came out in the 1800s. Still probably a little scandalous. This is the book Nana by Emile Zola. This is a book about a woman who is born very poor and manages to rise in 19th century Paris by virtue of the fact that she becomes the most famous high class prostitute of her day, as the back says. And the book is about how that hedonistic lifestyle consumes the people who are pursuing her, the men who are pursuing her, the women who want to be her or wish she was dead, and also her. And ultimately, it's just I think a novel where nobody gets what they want. When this book came out, it was scandalous. It provoked massive outrage when it was published. Obviously, I mean, it's about a prostitute, so it did in polite French society. It caused a bit of a stir, understandably. And Emile Zola was kind of that kind of author. He published a number of books about people who didn't fit the sort of nice categories of society, and so this is one of those. Nana. Yeah. So looking forward to reading this. I think there's a good moral portrait that's painted here. But yeah, a little scandalous, to say the least. Let's see. I'm actually going to do that one in a different order. The next one I could barely read the spine, so I almost didn't get this one. See if I can open it here and find the title page. This is The Hour Before Dawn, which is by W. Somerset Maugham. Maugham. I'm not sure how you say his last name. Maugham. Yeah. But it's a novel about British aristocrats. I believe before and during the First World War. Although I could be wrong. Could be the second. Cataclysmic disruptions of war-torn Britain. So maybe it's the second war. War-torn makes it sound like the Second World War. Maugham was a really famous, really well-read author around the turn of the 20th century and the mid-20th century. He's not super well-known anymore, but he does have some really good character study kind of novels. And I think this is one of those. So The Hour Before Dawn, but it's about a family and a family of aristocrats who are basically dealing with the end of that way of life in Second World War era Britain. So should be pretty good. So that last one, the Henry VIII one, was from 1945. This was published in 1942. So really old book. Again, this was $1, and it's in pretty good shape. The dust cover, there's actually part of it that was saved and stuck in the back. The part that tells you what the book is about. The rest of it's gone. But still in pretty decent shape. It's got this like beveled edges to the pages. Yeah, I hate this. This was created by people who don't read books. This was created by people who like the way books look. This is for decorating. This is not for people who read. I hate that. But it's a book that's 80 years old, so what are you going to do? The next one was a copy that's in really good shape of Silent Spring by Rachel Carson. Um, Now, if you watched the video I did about that book, Lost Mountain by Erik Reece, obviously he's an environmentalist. This book jump-started the modern environmentalist movement. Carson wrote a number of books about environmental problems in the 60s and 70s. And oh no, actually, looking at the back of this, even in the 50s, she was writing books about environmental issues. So she is sort of the mother of the modern environmental movement, or environmentalist movement, which certainly has its share of excess and craziness, no doubt. But as I talked about in the video about Lost Mountain, I think she is responding to some very real issues. Um, in the time period in which she wrote this book, there was a river in is it Pennsylvania or Ohio? A river that caught on fire and burned for I think a couple of weeks because of the amount of toxic chemicals that were in the river. Burned for weeks. And so when she writes about environmental problems in this book, today some people will read this book and be like, wow, she's crazy. Look at all these things she's saying about how we can't use these chemicals and blah, 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 blah. Well, it's because in her day and age, there was no um, there were no regulations about how corporations interacted with the environment, right? I mean, it was the Wild West, and so she's writing about like, hey, you can't dump toxic waste into a river. That was still legal in some places then, right? And so this book, I think, if you read it today, may end up sounding a little naive because she's saying things that it's like, well, duh, you can't do that to the environment. But it's only duh, you can't do that to the environment because she wrote this book and it spurred a huge number of changes. So it's only $1. It's a book club edition, but it is from, I think it's like 3 years after the original publishing date. This is from 62. Yeah, so this was from 62, and I think Silent Spring was originally published in 1960. So this is a very old copy of this book. And in, again, pretty good shape, especially for $1. Um, so the last three books all kind of go together. I actually did a lot of research on this book the other day because I could not, for the life of me, figure out when it was published because it doesn't say. But I did a little digging on the internet, and much to my chagrin, found myself asking ChatGPT if it could help me, and it could not. So yet another black mark against AI. But this is a very early. I think this might be from the 1930s. Um, Not sure, but possibly 1930s copy of the book Kim by Rudyard Kipling. Um, Kipling is, there are a number of people that I know who really love Rudyard Kipling. I actually got a copy of the Jungle Book, it's actually 2 volumes, that I gave to my boss because my boss loves Rudyard Kipling. And it was a 2 volume copy of the Jungle Book from 1942, I think, something like that. It was beautiful. It was great. Um, so Kim is about colonial India. The titular character, I'm almost certain I'm not mistaking this for another book, but Kim finds himself sort of working in the colonial bureaucracy for the British government in India. Uh, so Kipling was a big, well, I don't know if I would say, yeah, he's a fan of Empire. So he writes a lot of things which are not super critical of the British Empire, um, but in his day and age, that maybe was somewhat more understandable. Honestly, yeah, probably more understandable to a degree. I don't know. definitely don't want to take the time in this video about thrifting books to get into whether or not the British Empire is a good thing or a bad thing. So we'll just leave that where it is so that we can talk about the last two books, which go very much with that previous one, which is a selection of stories and poems by Rudyard Kipling. They were edited by a man named John Beecroft. Now, I have no idea who John Beecroft is. He must be of some importance, but I don't know who he is, and I don't particularly care because I didn't buy the book because it said his name. I bought it because it said Kipling and because of this incredible artwork. These books also very old. I think they're from the 60s. Very old. Sorry if anybody watching this is from the 60s. 50s. Okay, so great. So this book's older than my mom and dad, so it's okay. Yeah, so this was published in 1956. That's when these two volumes came out. And so these are illustrated volumes of primarily his short stories and some of his poetry. So there are some drawings in here, but primarily it's just his work. And these dust covers. Look at that. Man, guy with a cannon. Awesome. Oh man, and there's Kipling himself with, I might add, a blurb by none other than W. Somerset Maugham. Rudyard Kipling is the only writer of short stories our country has produced who can stand comparison with Guy de Maupassant and Chekhov. He is our greatest story writer. I can't believe he will ever be equaled. I am sure he can never be excelled. So this is volumes 1 and 2 of 2. Here's volume 2. That lady is like staring into your soul. Again, this is from 1956. So these were only $1, and I just, it's hard to pass something like that up. So there we are. But yeah, so that was $$8. And some of these books are really old. If I were the type of person who sold books on the internet, I would sell several of these on the internet because, particularly these Kipling books here, they're worth some serious money. I actually, in trying to figure out what the heck this was, I looked it up. There are copies of this book going on eBay for $25. So if I were the type of person who was like, oh yeah, let me buy that and resell it instead of let me buy that and read it, this would be worth some money. And these two Kipling volumes here would be worth some money. So, I'm not though. I'm the type of person who's going to put it on my shelf and read it when I'm 55. But I'll get there eventually. Don't you worry. So, yeah, not sure that I'm going to go back to that Peddlers Mall because, as I said, much of what I saw was overpriced. But the gentleman who was stocking that booth said that he wasn't done stocking the booth. So, I am going to go back, I think, sometime this week and just see if he actually did stock the booth again. But yeah, not much else there that I'm going to look at again. So that's what we got. And that's all she wrote. So see you next time. Go read something.